Hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to the channel. Well, forgive my unusual surroundings for this week's video. I'm actually away up the country on another job, but I have some time in the hotel room to quickly record a review for this week's episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is episode 4, entitled Memento Mori, the Gorn episode. I really loved this episode. I think it was an amazing episode with a lot of action and a lot of suspense, a lot of interesting character interplay between some of our characters, and it was kind of a return to the old classic kind of submarine style combat we had in not only episodes like the original series Balance of Terror, but also in Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, where you've got the Enterprise facing off against Khan in the Reliant and hiding in nebulas and all that sort of thing. It was a really a good homage to those type of old sort of submarine warfare style episodes. So let's take a look at this week's episode and see what it had to offer. So the episode started off talking about Remembrance Day, and all these little pins that the crew are wearing or whatever was obviously in recognition to lost friends, crew members, family members, and to kind of homage Starfleet ships that our crew have served on in the past. It was a nice beginning to the episode, but it sort of didn't really play into anything in the episode. It wasn't any important for any of the plot information for this week's episode, but I guess it was a nice little homage. I got to shine a light specifically on La'an's history with the SS Puget Sound in terms of what happened to her as a child and the attack from the Gorn on her family. This episode saw Uhura and Hema teaming up. We got to see them obviously having a lot of interplay in engineering. Obviously Uhura is doing the rounds of various different departments on board the ship, getting a kind of a sense of this and that in different departments, see where she might want to hang her hat, so to speak. So I quite liked the dynamics between Hema and Uhura in this episode. I thought his kind of gruffness and no-nonsense attitude, coupled with her, sort of, I guess, naive but experienced enthusiasm as well, was a nice mix in this episode. The landing party scene at the start did a good job of setting up the tension and the suspense of the ship, what's going on, who's responsible. The colonists are dead, there's blood trails dragged away on the ground. It was a good setup scene just to get us into that kind of whole, what's going on here, who's responsible. We kind of knew it was going to be the Gorn, but I think that just seeing dead bodies and blood trails and everything just sort of establishes a certain level of kind of creepiness and agitation, I think, that, set the episode in good stead. The transport ship that was hiding, they have to ferry the ship across to the Enterprise using the walkway gantry and everything, as opposed to beaming them onto the ship, because it's a mining transport ship, so it's heavily shielded. They can't transport through it, which I'm sure must cause a number of problems, not being able to use any transporters whenever you're on this ship. That's got to be a difficult workaround. But before long, that transport ship is destroyed. We've got number 1 injured, we've got La'an injured, we've got the colonists, some of them dead, some of them were saved in time. We've got creepy scenes with young girls clicking to simulate the way Gorn speak to each other, which kind of reminded me a lot of the whole scene with Newt back in Aliens, the James Cameron movie Aliens, where she used to say, they mostly come out at night, mostly, it was sort of along those lines, which I thought was kind of, a nice kind of setup. There's nothing like a whispering small girl to, feed you full of fear and dread about the oncoming situation. The other aspect I liked about this episode was that it was a return to the sort of disaster style episodes. We had a few of them, I think, in Next Generation, and I think maybe even in DS9, and certainly I think in Voyager with the whole Year of Hell episode. Those episodes where you get the ship in a bad situation, all of the systems are knocked out through a combat or through some phenomenon that disables the ship, everything's messed up, you've got crew members injured, stuck, isolated in parts of the ship, they can't get to each other. I think there's an episode of Next Generation, I think it's Disaster, where Geordi and Beverly get stuck in the cargo bay and they have to blow containers out into space and everything, and I think Picard was trapped in a turbolift with some kids, and it sort of reminded me a lot of those sort of style episodes where you had crew members forced to work with each other who maybe don't necessarily work with each other all the time, and how they get along together in a pressure cooker environment where you've got the ship is in trouble. It's under attack, they're stuck, they can't get out of this situation, and you've got crew members, you know, trying to work together the best they can to try to get out of the situation. And obviously, you know, things going on in sick bay. We've got Mbenga and we've got Nurse Chapel. Half the systems aren't working. They're having to stitch people up with old-fashioned sutures rather than more 23rd century means. Everything's falling apart around them, and somehow our crew have to rise to the challenge. So these kind of episodes are always a good reflection on characters, how people cope in a pressure cooker environment where, you know, everything appears to be lost or the ship is in grave peril, and thinking outside the box as well, crew members having to come up with creative ideas to get themselves out of trouble. I did like the way that La'an programmed or sent the message out in Gorn tongue or whatever that the Gorn ship had been infiltrated by Starfleet officers and was compromised, which then caused the mothership to blast it out of the sky because I guess the Gorn are maybe a little bit like the Borg in the sense that they, you know, if they sense weakness or something, you know, a damaged limb or that it's not really that strong or whatever, that they will chop it off and cast it adrift, you know. So that was quite of an inventive way to, you know, get the Gorn mothership to take out one of the fighters. I really enjoyed the interactions in sickbay between Number One and Chapel and Mbenga. I think trying to find inventive ways and making, you know, harsh judgment calls in terms of who was going to live and who was going to die, who was going to get the plasma. You know, Chapel has done some study in 20th century medicine, so she had to do the stitching up and everything, which was a little bit rougher than they normally manage on this show. And obviously the relationship between Pike and La'an, I think there was some, you know, interesting stuff there where we got to learn a bit more about La'an's history, what she went through as a child, her experiences with the Gorn and just how they affected her. And also with Spock as well, doing the mind meld with her in the shuttle, getting a bit more information about that, how, you know, and how that kind of played on things. And obviously the fact that, you know, Spock too had a mystery hidden in terms of his relationship with his sister, Michael Burnham. And how he lost her to, you know, the 32nd century. There was definitely some really nice character moments in this episode and good action too. I'm sitting there watching the episode on the edge of my seat, leaning in towards the TV. You know, at the, you know, those really, you know, captivating moments where they had to sort of launch the torpedo right at the right time when they were above the ship to take it out, and you know, how they were going to navigate the black hole. There was a lot of good suspense in this episode. I really enjoyed it. In fact, I would go as far to say it's been one of my favourite episodes of the season so far. I always enjoy the episodes that have, you know, a really good amount of character development. We get to know a bit more about the characters. You know, it's got some heart and some soul in it, where you know, feel something emotionally for the plight that the characters are going through. There's a bit of action as well, a bit of action and a bit of combat. It had a really good recipe, this episode, and I really enjoyed it. The way they got the Gorn to leave at the end of the episode as well, by sort of psyching them out and pretending to be destroyed so that they would leave, and then obviously coming out of the black hole at the last minute, sort of thing, after they'd detonated in the thing that Hemmer and Uhura were working on in the cargo bay. That was all, you know, really thought out tactics and really quite captivating. Everything kind of tied in at the end in terms of everybody's little involvements or whatever, in terms of what they were trying to overcome in the episode. It all kind of played its part in terms of how they were able to get out of there at the end of the episode and away from the Gorn. All in all, yep, loved this episode. Thought it was great. Good character stuff, good action, good adventure, good suspense, tactics. You know, a bit of thriller stuff in there as well. We didn't get to see a Gorn though. I was surprised because there was a shot in a trailer of something which very clearly resembled something that looked much like a baby Gorn. So I thought we were going to get this baby Gorn shot in this episode, but that must be for a future episode coming up later in the season. So yeah, I wonder what that's part of, because we didn't get to see Gorn in this episode. Plenty of Gorn ships involved, but no actual Gorn, you know, personnel. Guys, as always, please leave a super thanks if you're able to. It really helps the channel out, much appreciated. I'll be back home tomorrow, so my next video will be back in my usual studio. And as always, please leave a subscribe if you haven't already done so, and check out my merch in the merch store where you can pick up all the cool Star Trek flavoured t-shirts and hoodies and mugs and caps and everything for a bargain price that's always happening in the store for you to take advantage of. I'll be back very soon with my next video. I'll catch you guys soon.